Hey, it's Maryanne. Welcome to the Influential Nonprofit. And today we're going to talk about a really juicy, rich topic, which is what does it look like to be fully self expressed? What does it look like to actually live in alignment with your truth? And I talk a lot about self expression, and I even did the podcast a couple weeks ago around karaoke and being fully self expressed. But full self expressed doesn't mean we're going to run away and join the circus. It doesn't mean we're going to sing karaoke, although I love that. It means that we are living in alignment with our truth and we are speaking our truth and asking for and receiving what we want. Because when we don't, our life tends to feel like it's happening to us instead of for us. Here's some examples of what this could look like. Have you ever walked away from a conversation wishing you had said what you really meant? Or you were in a conversation and then as soon as that ended, you went and found somebody else that was less risk and told them what you really thought, not in the conversation where it mattered. Or you may find yourself holding back, not because you didn't know it was true, but because you weren't sure how it would be received. You think self expression is about speaking up, but what self expression and full self expression actually is about living in alignment with who you truly are. And today we're going to talk about what it means to live fully expressed, the cost of holding back, how full expression shows up, and exactly how to implement it into your life. So if you want to learn to do this, just come along with me. Now I want to say this is a practice. This is a practice. I have been working on this skill for many years and I continue to work on it every day. And I get better at it and I'm not perfect. What I can tell you is two things that are very true. One is these skills have enhanced my life greatly. I'm a better partner, I'm a better parent, I'm a better friend, I'm a better coach, business leader, everything because of these skills and this practice. But the second thing, which is also true, is I am not perfect. I am always learning. I always don't say what I want. Sometimes my tongue gets tied. Sometimes I subvert a part of myself that I won't think will be accepted. And also, I'm aware of what's going on when it's happening. I'm like, isn't that interesting? I didn't say this, or isn't that interesting? I hid this part of me. And so I can see it, like I can see it and I understand it, but I'm not perfect at it. And I'm aware of it and I'm working on it. So I'm always getting better and you can always get better. So like I said, this is a practice, it's not perfection. This is a skill we're going to learn over time. The last thing I want to say about this is often self-expression is easier with people that you know less. The less risk. Like it's like the Olympics, right? Your family is like the Olympics. You just don't start with the Olympics, right? You don't take one gymnastics lessons and go for gold. You really work it out. So a lot of times some of the skills I'm going to teach you can start with maybe colleagues or acquaintances, people that have less risk to the relationship, and then you can work your way up to maybe the boss or the place where the relationship has where you perceive it to be riskier. It's your choice. You can dive in the deep end if you want. I'm not going to stop you. But it's okay if you want to start slow. Okay, so let's talk about the cost of holding back because this is a high cost and you may not realize that it is holding you back because this is just a habit or a pattern. But there are ways that we filter ourselves, right, to make ourselves more palatable to others. We do people pleasing. We say yes to things that we don't really want to do because we don't know how to say no. We fear rejection. We fear being said no to. We fear the feelings that rejection brings up. We fear conflict. And right, like I know you probably don't wake up and say, I love conflict. Let's go have it. Everyone I know is going to say they're conflict averse, and that's okay. And my relationship with conflict has grown over the years. Where I've learned to understand the role that conflict plays. And it's still tough for me sometimes. I get it. We want to avoid conflict. That's a natural inclination. Our natural inclination is to move away from pain and towards pleasure. That is our brain is hardwired to do that. So of course we don't want to do things where we might face rejection or face conflict. And we want to be liked. Most of us in nonprofit, we're good people, we're helpful people. We want to be liked, we want to get along, and we put up professional masks, and we get bound by these roles. A lot of times you've heard me say there's no difference between personal and professional. How you show up one place is how you show up every place. But we put on these professional masks and we subvert part of ourselves. Now, I know there are times when, let's say, you want to connect with people, and so you're bringing forward something of yourself. That's different. That's choosing to use something. Like, let's say, I'm training a board, and I might dress a little more professionally because I want to match their energy, but I'm still coming in my full self. I'm not doing or being anything that's outside of me. I'm just putting forward that part of me that I think they're going to relate to best. It's very different. I'm making a conscious choice instead of subverting a part of myself. So you can look and think about, where are you holding back? What conversations are you avoiding? What parts of you gets edited or subverted before others get to see it? Lest they see the real you. Right? I said, if people knew who I really was, they wouldn't love me. And so you subvert those parts of yourself, lest you feel that no one would accept you. There's a couple of things I want to say about this. First of all, the most authentic person in the room is the most powerful. The person that is the most self-actualized, aligned, is the most powerful person in the room. And people will gravitate towards that person because they have so much power. Because so much of our life is diverted, subdued, hidden. When someone can speak their truth, live in alignment, people find that very attractive, and it is incredibly powerful. So the tools I'm teaching you will make you absolutely powerful. And the second is, I wasn't good at this, right? I wasn't good at this. Before I started, let me back up. I would say, yes, there's parts that I was good at intuitively, and yet there was so much that I didn't say because I was afraid of how people would take it. I'm going to give you a super concrete example of what this looked like. When I worked for a company, and we would go to like new business meetings and we would meet new people, I could see what was happening very clearly. But I would keep that to myself. Now, sometimes I kept it to myself because they really weren't ready to hear what the problem was. They really weren't ready. We didn't have enough trust established to start talking about solutions. And yet there will be questions or observations that I could have made in the meeting to let them know how much I understood them, yet I didn't say that because I wanted to please them. We wanted to get the business. I wanted to say the right things. And if I said the wrong thing, we wouldn't get the business. So I would keep it to myself. Or my boss and I would talk about it in the car on the drive back to our office. I would subvert the truth. And I remember very specifically being in a meeting, and it was a big one too. There was like 8 people around this big old conference table. High flying foundation. And I took a deep breath and I said, here's what I'm seeing about what you're communicating. And I explained what I thought the situation was. In this specific instance, I was just saying that the information in their newsletter was too internal and not external focused. And you wouldn't believe the shift in energy when I said that. I made a very astute observation, and it was received, and we wound up getting the business. My point is that the more I started to speak in alignment and share my thoughts and my gifts and release conflict and release rejection and just let it happen, the more business that we got. But it was scary. It was scary because I didn't know how it would be received. Now I do this every day, all day, as a matter of habit that I've taught myself, that I've learned, and I'm very powerful. And I ask questions because I know how to do it, and I know how to help people see something new and reveal something about themselves in a way that feels good to them and a way that they can receive. I have learned how to navigate the world much more successfully, not just in business, but in life. I find myself in great mutually beneficial relationships. I find myself also helping other people, being a model for this, an inspiration, and also a guide and a coach. I have many folks in my life who look to me for that anchor of support. When you live a life in alignment, you're not you're not like the raft going down the rapids, going from one side to the other, just holding on for dear life. I'm like the reed in the water. I am anchored and rooted. Yeah, I can bend and move, but I don't feel like I'm being thrown around by life. And that's what this does. It allows you to stay anchored and rooted. For some of the people in my life that I care about very much, I'm the anchor, right? I'm the grounded one. I'm the rooted one that they know that they can count on. This is how I am to my clients. And I practice this and work on this. And I have people in my life who are my anchors. Right? They are the ones that are grounded, that I know I can come to. I said, I'm not perfect at this. I have, however, worked on it for a long time, and I'm pretty good at it. And I love how it's changed my life. So just think about, where do you hold back? What conversations are you avoiding? What part of yourself gets edited before others see it? Every time we consistently suppress our truth, we create distance between who we are and how we show up. And that is the greatest source of pain, the dissonance between who we are and who we're supposed to be. So let's talk about what self-expression is, because it's more than just speaking. The biggest misconception, I think, about self-expression is primarily what comes out of our mouths. I need to speak up more. I need to say what I think. I need to find my voice. While all those things matter, they really only scratch the surface, because the truth is, we're expressing ourselves all the time in every choice we make. The question is whether we're expressing ourselves in a way that is in alignment with who we are. We express ourselves through the choices that we make. Every decision we make communicates something. The opportunities we pursue, the relationships we stay in, the invitations we accept, the invitations we decline. Even when we don't say a word, we are expressing our values, priorities, fears, and desires through our choices. Sometimes the most authentic expression isn't a conversation, it's a decision. Let's talk about how this shows up. First, in boundaries and agreements. Many people, you think boundaries are keeping people out, but boundaries and agreements are a wonderful form of self-expression. A boundary says, this is what I no longer want. An agreement says, this is what I do want. This is what matters to me. This is what I value. This is what I need. This is what I'm available for. Healthy boundaries and agreements are acts of self-expression. I'm allowed to say, hey, boundaries are, and let me back up, because if you're not familiar with this terminology in my work, boundaries are things that I don't want to have happen. Agreements are things that I do want to have happen. I always use this example of my client, Kylie, and a boundary and agreement. In the office that she used to work in, it was very small, and there was a lot of chatter, and they would, have conversations throughout the day. But sometimes she needed to do work that called for like a very hyper focus, like maybe a grant deadline. And it was difficult because she would keep getting interrupted, because there was just a natural flow of conversation through the office. So she wanted to create a boundary where she wasn't interrupted. But the agreement that she set was, she got like this shower curtain thing to put over her cube, her little office partition. So when the shower curtain was closed, like, she needed focus. When it was open, it was okay to come in and chat. So the agreement she made with the office is, hey, when the curtain's open, please come in. When it's closed, I'm focused. So she created a boundary, what I don't want to be interrupted, but we created agreement of what I do want is focused time. And in self-expression, we can say, hey, this is the agreement. And I can make an agreement with myself. I can make an agreement with anyone I want. But the agreement is, this is what matters to me. Here's what I value. Here's what I need. Or here's what I'm no longer available for. So when we create boundaries and agreements, we create scenarios where we can live by what's important to us. Okay. Now, we also express ourselves through creativity, whether it's writing, cooking, gardening, painting, any of these things, building a business, designing a workshop, um, creativity is expression made visible. It's taking something that's inside you and giving it form. And I feel like this is why so many people feel disconnected to themselves, is because they've stopped creating. And this is why I love going to karaoke, because that's my creative self-expression. It's a freedom for me. They've stopped allowing what's outside of them, stopped allowing what's inside of them to emerge into the world. I was on a call with somebody a couple of months ago, and she was telling me that she used to be a dancer, but there's no time for that anymore. And I said to her, I said, could I just share a little bit with you? I said, I feel like the dancing that's not wasted time. That's time connecting with that creative soul that you have that's going to feed all this work that you do. Any time we spend creating is time we spend bringing forward who we are into the world. But it also means bringing that into the world that could risk rejection. Maybe she thinks that she's not as good of a dancer as she was, and what's the point? And so creative self-expression is allowing what's inside you to emerge into the world and allowing it to be seen. One of the things I love to do is, like, listen, I've had this weird relationship with cooking my whole life. I never liked to cook. And then I sort of like begrudgingly became friends with cooking. And then I started to really like cooking. Once I realized you could just make stuff up, and you didn't have to follow a recipe, or, you got some basics down and then you could create from there. I'm like, oh my God, this is so good. So now, like, I'll cook and I'll make a big pot of something and I'll make little containers and give it to friends. And I'm like, because I love to have what I made emerge into the world. I think it's really fun. And, I make a big pot of jambalaya and I always give my friend a little container of it for, a big pot of gumbo. And I don't know why I cook for 30 every time I cook, but I do. But that's creative expression. And it just allows what's inside of you to emerge into the world. Okay, another way we express ourselves is through our presence. And this is often overlooked because we're not always think about how we're showing up. And I know you've had the experience where, somebody walks into the room and you immediately feel calm or excitement or warmth. Um, Before saying anything, they're expressing something. You know the phrase, because I say it all the time: energy speaks louder than words. And we can choose the energetic by which we show up. I'm not faking it. You can't fake the energy. That's not it, but we're choosing it. Their energy communicates, their presence communicates, how they listen, how they make people feel. And sometimes your presence, you may you may not be conscious of your presence. And I get that. It could be a hurried day, a rush day, all of those things. But when you can choose your presence, when you can say, I am going to choose calm, I'm going to choose warmth, I'm going to choose possibility. One of my clients would get out of her car and rush into the office, rush, rush, rush. And it was a rush, rush, rush. And from the moment that car door opened, she was in a rush. And I said, Jenny, you could walk into the building and walk through the day and still get the same amount of things done. She realized that she was putting herself in a state of panic, and it started the moment she stepped on that parking lot and rushed into the office. What if I chose to walk with calm confidence? What if I chose to walk and think, there's enough time enough for everything. We're going to have a great day. It's all going to, it's all okay. It's all working for me. And come into the office with that kind of calming energy, being the anchor, right? Not the rapid, not rolling down the rapids and taking everyone with her. So you can express yourself through your presence. And we express ourselves through what we tolerate. Now, this can be a little bit uncomfortable. Hang with me. We consistently tolerate situations that violate our values. We're expressing something too. We're communicating what we're willing to accept and what we're willing to overlook. And I feel like this happens a lot in our world because we don't feel like we can oftentimes express ourselves, and that we tolerate a lot because we feel like we have to. Because often we're working with people who have perceived positions of power, a board member, a big donor, and we are willing to abandon ourselves. Sometimes the most powerful expression isn't speaking the truth, it's continuing to betray your truth. Let's talk about what this shows up, because this, as uncomfortable it is, may be more common than you think. So I worked with somebody for a while, and she was the office fixer. Everybody came to her with her problems, and it was really, I want to say, disruptive to her day and exhausting, because she would be fixing problems and she was getting triangulated. So if she fixed the problem, she was the hero. If she didn't fix the problem, she was the villain. And so she was keeping all these people around her unknowingly in a victim mode, because she was the fixer and the solver, and she was going home exhausted. Everyone was going home exhausted. It really wasn't serving them. And when I said, okay, so this was a big question, and this is about self-expression in me, because I asked the question, is there a part of you that benefits from this situation? Because I wanted her to see that there was a part of her that, probably an ego-driven part of her, which is fine, we all have an ego, that liked being this, right? That liked fixing, that liked being the dispensator, right, of wisdom, and the fixer and the solver. And she said, yes, absolutely. Also, this was no longer serving her. But I wanted her to see that there was this behavior, that she was tolerating this behavior because she benefited from it somehow. And then once we got through that, then we could start working on creating new patterns. She was tolerating behavior. And so we tolerate a board that doesn't email us back. We tolerate, friends in our lives who don't treat us well. We tolerate these things because we're afraid to ask for what we want. And when we abandon ourselves, that's where the pain comes from. Because people are going to do what they're going to do, right? Like, that's fine. We get to decide, right? We're the sovereign ones in our field. We get to decide what we will and won't accept in our life. When I talk about being sovereign, I say who comes. I say who goes. I say who comes into my office and when. No, I say what's on my calendar. I'm the sovereign one. And here's what I accept. Here's the interesting thing about this, is that when you raise your standards, right, when you say, enough of this, I take my power back, I'm no longer tolerating this in my life. When I raise my standard, people either rise to meet it or they'll fall away. And that is so true. They'll either be like, oh, that's cool, I'm coming with you. Or they're no longer getting the benefit of whatever situation they were benefiting from that you would tolerate. Once you no longer tolerate that, that's no longer attractive to them, and they move on. They will find somebody else to tolerate that behavior. Trust me, but it won't be you. So we express ourselves through what we tolerate or what we won't tolerate. And once we raise our standards, people either rise to meet it or they'll fall away. Trust me on this. I've seen it happen so many times. And it is a glorious thing, because the people who just don't meet the standard, they just fade away. It's not even a conflict. It's just, you're no longer have a purpose in each other's lives. Okay. Now let's talk about full self-expression made visible. What does it look like? For me, it's not saying everything you think. It's not being the loudest person in the room, although typically I am. But that's not what this really means. It's not sharing every feeling the moment you have it, and far from it. Because what you're going to learn is like how best to share and when. It's living in a way where your outer life increasingly reflects your inner truth. Your words align with your values. Your choices align with your desires. Your boundaries align with your needs. Your relationships align with who you are becoming. And they are with you in that journey. When those things begin to line up, you become more fully expressed. Not because you're talking more. It's because you're living more honestly. Yes? Okay. So I'm going to say this again and I'm going to slow it down just a little bit because I really want this to land. It's living in a way where your outer life increasingly reflects your inner truth. Your words align with your values, your choices align with your desires, your boundaries align with your needs, and your relationships align with who you are becoming. There's a mantra, and I've shared this before, and I want to share it again because it really is one of my favorite phrases that I learned from one of my coaches and adapted to me. And I want to say this right now. And if this resonates with you, feel free to grab this language and adapt it for your own use. I am not dictated or controlled by outer circumstances that I have allowed to own me. Something being there or something being there or not doesn't decide my power, capability, or worth. When I show up, the universe shows up. I don't entertain anything else. I am sovereign in my field of existence. I lead, I decide, I generate, I create the pattern. That is my mantra, and I say it every day. And that keeps me, right, in that space of living that fully expressed life. I'm the sovereign one. I say who comes and goes. I say what happened. Am I perfect at this? No. Am I better than I was? Absolutely. Is my life better for it? 100%. Okay, so let's talk about how we can really apply this into our life. I'm going to give you a framework, and it's a 7-step process so that you can apply this and integrate this into your life. Here are the 7 steps. The first one is notice where you're withholding. This is awareness before action. I told you, like, sometimes, like, when I'm withholding, I'm like, oh my gosh, I am doing that. Okay, interesting. Okay, just notice when there's the disconnect. That's all you have to do, right? Just be aware of it. Second, ground yourself before responding. You're going to respond, not react. You know, my kids and my kids, you know what? My one kid has some health challenges, and it's when I learned that step number 1 for disciplining, you know, or providing consequences is, am I regulated? Is he regulated? That I know that there are certain times that it's I'm going to respond. You know, if you get the email that comes up and there's a sting of criticism and you're ready to just hit reply, okay, maybe just take a breath, take the weekend, take the night. I'm going to respond, not react. You know, I'm going to ground myself. Am I regulated? You know, is this a good time for me to respond instead of just reacting in the moment? So I'm just react. I can hear something and I can hold it and I can say, let me think about that, how I want to respond to that. Number 3 is check timing. Not every truth needs immediate expression. So I'm going to ground myself and then check the timing. Like as I said before, am I regulated? Is he regulated? Is this a good time to receive that? I with my son, I'll have things that I want to say, and then I will notice a time where he's feeling very open, and then that's when I'll bring those things up. I'm not going to, when you are dysregulated, when you are in fight or flight, your body is full of all of the hormones and the chemicals that get released in that, so that you really actually can't absorb new information because you went into fight or flight mode. So it oftentimes when you are in a disagreement or you're in conflict, that is not the time. You may need to take a breath and take a beat and wait till we're more regulated in order to revisit. Now, here's number 4. Seek to understand first. If there's one thing that I would love for you to take away from this, is seek to understand first. People are more willing to hear you when they feel heard. And what does this look like? Help me understand. Tell me more about that. These are phrases that I teach, that I use all the time. Tell me more about that. What makes you ask that? What makes you say that? Help me understand that. I don't have to answer for it, justify it, solve it, anything. All I have to do is ask more questions. My job is to seek to understand. This happens a lot. I was just on a call with a client, and one of our board members is like, we should do a gala. I went to this gala and they raised $400,000. And I immediately, she wants to say, we don't have time for that. We're not going to do that, da da da. Because that's a reaction. And you want to quash that. And I totally get that. But instead of doing that, say, oh, well, help me understand what was so great about the gala. Oh, tell me more about that. And so that when you're going to give your thoughts on doing a gala, you're understanding their point of view, because their perspective could be something that could be easily attended to. So let's go back to the gala example. It's just like, oh my God, it was so fun. It was totally, I'm just going to make this up. It was totally in line with their mission. It was so cool to see it like that. They raised all this money, blah, blah, blah. I just loved how they made me feel. Oh, great. So it sounds like that event was really powerful because you felt super connected to the mission. And that was really, yeah, okay. That's so great. In our event, maybe we could work on and make sure we're really connecting people to the mission, because that felt like that really moved you. Yeah, that would be great. Okay, so in that 2 sentences, I made the gala go away, and I pulled out what was really important to that person, which is how it made them feel, not necessarily the gala. Now, I'd be like, oh, great, now I have to do a gala, blah, blah, blah. No, you don't. I can figure out what's wrong and make it go away, in a sense, right? Because I'm not going to do what I don't want to do or what I know is not right because somebody else had an idea. But I don't say, hey, that idea is totally wrong. What the heck are you talking about? I say, help me understand it. Because when I listen to understand and I listen, then I can, then people are more willing to hear what I have to say because I've heard what they have to say. And also, I can really understand what's actually happening and deal with that instead of what I think is happening. Okay, now, step 5, express what's true. Speak clearly and kindly and courageously. And the most important thing, I think, is when we speak clearly and kindly and courageously, we are doing it in a way where they can hear and receive what we're saying. We're saying what's true in a way that they can relate to. Instead of speaking to manage someone's reaction, we're speaking and you're speaking to communicate both authentically and with wisdom. And that is very different than speaking in order to make something palatable than speaking the truth that we actually feel or the idea that we'd love to have implemented. One of my coaches would call it speak the unspoken, what's not being said. And part of being a good leader and creating self-expression in yourself is that you're allowing it in others. So you can have much more candid dialogue. You can have much less risk, right? People can tell the truth. They can be honest about what's going on. They're not subverting or trying to make things palatable to you because they know that you can handle it. They know that you can handle the truth. It's not, the hardest part of this is not figuring out what's true. The hardest part is expressing the truth in a way that honors yourself and the other person. And this is where this practice comes in. And this is where, like I said, I don't want to manage their reaction. I want to say it in a way that they can hear it. Like I told you the story of the foundation, and I took that deep breath and I spoke the truth. Part of me had to release that truth. Part of me had to release the reaction because I thought it was important for them to understand from my professional opinion, from my expertise, which is what they were looking for me to provide, what I saw. And by hiding that, I was doing everyone a disservice in the room. I was keeping myself safe, but I really wasn't serving anybody, most of all the client and least of all myself in that situation, right? Because I was going to go home safe, but they were going to go home unserved. And so this is how real leadership happens, is that we're speaking the truth and we're creating rooms and spaces and relationships where the truth can be heard. And I, as I practice this, can honor other people's truths. I don't have to fix it. I don't have to solve it. I don't have to answer for it. I just have to receive it. And man, that is so freeing. Okay, let's keep going because number 5 is express what's true. And now we're going to hit number 6, which is this may be my favorite part because number 6 is practice sovereignty. Now I read you my mantra that I practice every day about sovereignty, right? Outside things don't dictate my worth. Something being there or not doesn't dictate my worth. I choose my worth. I don't have to respond to everything. I don't have to explain every decision. I don't have to convince people. Sometimes the highest form of self-expression is sovereignty, is just owning yourself. And I could talk a lot about sovereignty because I think it is so important, but this is a practice of practicing sovereignty. You are the king, you're the queen, you're the ruler, you are the one. You get to say who comes and goes. You get to decide your worth. I'm going to tell you a quick story about sovereignty that I think is so important and really encapsulates some of this before we get to step 7. I had a client once and I said, what do you want? And she said, I want to be seen as credible. I don't think we're seen as a credible organization. And I said, okay, what would it mean to be credible? She said people would respect us and they would invest in us. And I said, all right. And also what she wanted is if people see us as credible, we're credible. The lesson here for her was when you see yourself and your organization as credible, people will then see you as credible. It's coming from within you. You're the sovereign one. You get to decide when you're credible. You get to raise that standard anytime. You can choose at any time. Enough of this. We're credible. People will either rise to meet it or they'll fall away. And that's exactly what happened. The couple people in her world that she wanted to influence, one of them rose to meet her and the other one fell away. Just like that, like magic. But the sovereignty doesn't come from external. When I raise this much money, I'll feel good. No, I feel good. And from that place of power and possibility, I become a powerful fundraiser. The sovereignty is an inside out game. So I don't have to respond to everything. I don't have to let everything affect me. I get to choose. And when I do let things affect me, I say, isn't that interesting information? What a good observation that maybe I didn't speak up. I wasn't acting in my sovereign self. And that's some good information. And I know where I can choose to practice more. Okay, step 7, live in alignment. And I said this a million times already, but expression is an event. It's a practice, right? It is a practice. So we're going to do this every day and work on it. You're not going to be permission to be bad to be good, permission to be good to be great. So just remember, you're not going to be perfect at it. And with practice, you'll get better at it. And I would love to hear how your relationships shift and change and your world and your energy shifts and change. I know the people who I coach and train are navigating things more effectively. They're more powerful leaders. They have better days. They have more autonomy and sovereignty over their schedules, over their lives. And they feel more at peace with the world because they are living in full self-expression. And I want to give you an example, of what I'm going to call the arch perspective. So a couple of weeks ago, I had clients come into town and we did a reunion retreat kind of thing. And one of the activities we did was to go up into the arch. We're going to talk about the symbolism of going up in the arch. Because we're working on self-expression, like what is the feeling of what looks different than when we zoom out? What problem becomes smaller? What truth becomes clearer? One of the beauties of living a fully self-expressed life is that I feel like I have a 10,000 foot view. I can see what's going on. I can read people. I can understand myself. I can understand other people. I can understand dynamics at play. I was a person that took almost everything personally. Any little slight, any little look, I would go to a party and I would come home and stay up half the night worrying about, did I say the right thing? Did I do the right thing? A lot of those feelings are gone. It just doesn't matter. I have this 10,000 foot view where the I can see what becomes smaller. I can see through to things, and I feel sort of above it all, not in a like a ego way, but above it all, like that I can float above some of the chaos. It doesn't have to affect me. I can see it, I can understand it, but I don't have to be in it. So here's some questions that you can ask. You know, as you internalize all of this, which is, where am I holding back? What truth wants expression? Where could I choose to have more courage in my life? Where could I choose to have more wisdom in my life? What boundary or agreement would honor my voice? And what would a fully expressed version of me do next? I love that last question, because you could say, what would the fully expressed version of me do? You know, what's the next best choice I can make? Here we go. Let's bring this all home, friends. Living your voice isn't about becoming somebody different. It's not. It is just removing distance between who you are and how you show up. It's expressing yourself with courage, with wisdom, understanding, and sovereignty. And it's about becoming more fully you. The more fully you are, the more powerful you become, the more change you're going to make. And isn't that why we're here? To actually change the world, to put good things in the world. And to do that, you need to be fully self-expressed. You can choose to be fully self-expressed, because how you show up will affect the conversations you have and the real work that you do and the real changes you make. If you want to learn to be fully self-expressed, if you want some little more guidance from me, as always, there's a link in the show notes. Please book a call with me. I am happy to connect with you and talk about where you're not living your life at full self-expression, and maybe some tools to help you do that more effectively. Remember, it's a practice. We're all growing in it, and I'll see you next time on The Influential Nonprofit.